The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, good morning, or I guess it might be good afternoon to some of you. This is Garen Hess at Rapid Intake, and I'm going to be your trainer today for extending Rapid Intake to make reusable content page templates. So this is a training session rather than a sales demo session, so it's going to be a little bit more extended. I want to make sure everybody can hear me, so we actually only have a couple of people in this session today, Chris and John. We had 7 or 8 people signed up, but looks like you are the 2 dedicated people keeping your appointment here, so which is great. So I may be able to open up the audio through the interface to allow you to ask verbal questions, which would be nice since we only have a few people. So if you can hear me, can you click on the hand button to make sure you can just, that's like raising your hand. Okay, John, I see you can hear me, great. Chris, wonder if Chris is at his desk. Oh. So Chris, if you can hear me, go ahead and hit the hand button on the interface to show that you can hear me. Okay, still waiting on Chris here. I'm going to unmute Chris and see if we can chat with you for a second.
Hey, yeah, I can't see, but I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me fine?
But I don't have the page. I don't seem to have the page.
Does it show the opening screen there?
Yeah, let's see here.
Let me share I haven't shared anything yet.
There, now I see you. Okay, there we go.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm going to put you on mute again. I have the mute controls, so if you have a question as we go along, just raise your hand in the interface, and that way I can make sure that any background noise or anything like that doesn't show up. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you here, Chris. All right, so well, let me unmute you both just to ask you a few questions since we just have a couple of you here. So, Chris, what organization are you from?
I'm working for Genentech at the moment, Garen.
Oh, okay, Genentech. And John, how about you? Are you there, John? Oh, looks like, oh, John doesn't have a microphone. Okay, no problem. Well, John, you can just interact through the chat area or through the question and answer area. So he says he works for Texas Health and Human Services Commission. Now, are both of you Rapid Intake users already using either Unison or ProForm?
I use ProForm, Garen.
Okay, and John, what do you use? Okay, ProForm. Okay. Well, that may make it a little shorter because we won't need to cover the Unison part of it, but we're going to start with ProForm, and if anyone else joins us, we may just we'll do Unison at the end. That way, if you guys want, you can see that. If not, you can just take off after that part. So, John, I'm wondering if you can see the chat area. Do you see a chat window or just the question answer window? In fact, let me see if I can chat something to you. I just see maybe the chat window in GoToWebinar here is just for the staff or the whole audience. Anyway, using the question area is just fine. So, okay, so you see you saw my chat, but I guess you can't chat back to me through that interface there. Okay, a lot of work. All right. Well, again, I want to welcome both of you. I'm going to unmute here. I want to welcome you both to the training session. And as I mentioned, my name is Garen Hess. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Rapid Intake, and it's my pleasure to spend a little bit of time with you showing you some of the more advanced features of ProForm Rapid eLearning Studio. It's one of the things that makes it a very powerful tool, It's the ability to extend its capabilities. Now, it does require, to be able to do this, it does require that you have some background in Flash, because we're going to be using the Flash source code that comes with the professional edition of ProForm to be able to build XML-driven templates associated with that. So, do both of you have some background in Flash? Maybe go ahead and I'll just check with you here. Chris, how about you?
Yeah. I believe I'm an advanced user of Flash, Garen.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. And John, how about you? Just a bit. Okay. Well, that's fine. We're not going to spend lots of time in coding or anything. I'm basically going to teach you the principles behind it, show you some examples, and then that will give you enough information to be able to go do it on your own. We're not going to learn how to use ActionScript here per se, anything like that. But I will be showing you some ActionScript to be able to, so you can understand how it all fits together. So let me start by just mentioning that this training is part of our Unlimited program, and this is a complete customer care program that we started a few months ago. And we've always tried to make an effort to treat our customers very well and help them progress and use the tools well and so on, but we're trying to make a more overt effort to provide more access to training and other kinds of opportunities for learning. In fact, you can come to our offices even get hands-on training on all the different subjects that we hold these webinars for as part of our Unlimited program. Our Unlimited program also includes email and live chat support. So if you haven't tried live chat support, you can find that on our website. Let me just show you where that is. So you can click Live Help here, which will let you choose to chat with either sales or support. If you want to really focus on the support, you can just come down to the Support Center here, and this will give you all of your support options, and this is where you would chat with Live Help there. Now, the other thing I just want to point out related to the Unlimited plan is the training area. You probably know about this because this is where you sign up for the webcast that you're in, but just to emphasize, we have self-paced tutorials here, and we're constantly adding to that the live webcast, which is one of the sessions we're doing today, and hands-on training. And all of these are included with your purchase as being a user and customer of Rapid Intake. We also have the option of training at your location. If you have a large group, then it may be worth the cost. We do charge for that, and so you can get more information about that if you need it. So as you probably know, we have two products, ProForm and Unison. ProForm being the product that will let you build interactive Flash-based courses on your desktop, so a desktop product, and Unison being the web-based application. Unison is designed to be a little bit more collaborative in nature. And everything you're going to learn today about ProForm is something that can be applied to Unison with the exception of building the forms. And we'll talk about the differences in a minute, but forms are important in this process we're going to talk about because our goal is to build reusable templates that do what you want them to do, but they can be built just filling out forms just like all the other kinds of content templates in ProForm and Unison. So the way you build forms is different between ProForm and Unison because ProForm is a Flash application, meaning that the actual program you use was built in Flash, and Unison is actually a Flex application, which is sort of another version of Flash designed for web-based applications. And because of that difference, we approach the form building a little bit differently. But other than that, the concepts are all the same, and apart from the process of building forms, everything you'll learn about ProForm can be translated over into building things for Unison. I want to mention just the difference between what we consider customizing versus extending. So what we're going to learn to do here is to create custom page templates and make them available to other people that use ProForm or Unison. And this is a powerful feature because if you want to expand what ProForm and Unison can do, not only can you expand it for yourself, but you can expand it for everyone else on your team. And we're actually going to be opening a community site where you can even share or sell templates that you may build to other Rapid Intake users. And so not only can it be for, even if you're building it just for yourself, if you're a sole developer, you may want to share that with the community and participate in getting additional templates from the community. What we're not going to do is learn how to create custom course styles. Now, this is we do have a training session on how to do that, but that's not included in this training session. I do want to point out that we do have on our website in the live webcast tab a recorded webinar on how to create custom course styles for ProForm and Unison. So when we're talking about custom course styles, we're talking about the interface. So just to be clear about what the differences are here, if you look at our showcase here, it shows a bunch of different interfaces that have been built by our customers and some of their content and so on. But the interfaces can be completely customized in Flash, but that is a separate training session. What we're really talking about is how to build custom templates that do content, focus on content, interactive content. This is just a screenshot, but just as an example of a template that one of our customers built, they have a step-by-step kind of template where the learner clicks a button and on the first step, and it shows the text and it plays some audio. And then when the audio is done, it shows some steps over, some footprints over to step 2. They click that, they get more information. They click that, they get that. It's just their way of, an interactive way of trying to teach steps in a procedure. And again, you could build that in Flash and just save it as a Flash movie, integrate it into whatever course you're making, but that means every time you wanted to use that approach that you would have to rebuild that in Flash. Well, Unison and ProForm allow you to extend its capabilities so that you could make this form-based, so that you could create a form and just go select the image, put in the text, select the audio, and do that 4 times, and then that would be written out to the XML, and then the template itself would pull all that in and let the learner interact with that. And so, of course, the advantage of that is anybody could build that from that point on by just filling out the form rather than having to have Flash or know how to use Flash and so on. So we're not going to look at this specific example, but I wanted to show it to you as a way to explain how you can come up in your own mind with what you want, and just like this customer, and make your own reusable templates. And that's really what we're here for today. So again, this is based on the Flash source code. So you do need in ProForm the Professional Edition. In Unison, depending on what kind of account you have, you would need the PowerPro customization access. This is just means you have a module that allows you the Flash source code. Now, anybody who's purchased Unison in the last couple of months, as part of our Unlimited program, the source code is included in every account. So it just depends on if you have that. So we're going to start with ProForm. And when we're talking about extending, ProForm has the main authoring environment, also comes with some media building utilities such as the Swish animation tool and the RapidCam screen recorder. We're not really talking about how to use these. We're just going to focus on this, the main authoring environment, how to build those form-based templates in the authoring environment. So with that introduction, I want to start by explaining how the whole thing fits together in an overview kind of sense. So if we start here, this is the ProForm interface. And when somebody picks a template, such as you can see here, the text, image, and audio template, they get a form associated with that. And each object in the form corresponds with a certain place in the XML. So basically, when you fill out this form, it's creating the XML associated with that content. And then the Flash movie on the other side says, oh, I need to find out what the title of the page is, what the text should be, what the image is, and so it goes out and looks in the XML and pulls that in dynamically. So having the text externalized and all the content externalized is a very powerful capability of rapid intake tools, because not only can it be localized into other languages, but it's more maintainable because all the content gets pushed or pulled into the Flash player at the time the learner needs it. So if you ever need to replace an image, rather than having to republish a Flash movie, you simply replace the image that is associated with it and so on. And you don't even need to open ProForm or Unison to do that. So if we look at the same example a little bit more closely, right, let's take a look at just one item in the form. So we have the images. In this particular form, there's text, image, and audio. And we'll just use this as a sample to understand the concept. But all the templates work the same way, essentially. So the form asks for a path to an image, and we put that path in. And then this interface actually writes out to the XML file in what's called the page tag, right? You can see over here the page tag, and we'll go into this in more detail. But this is going to write this out to the what's called an XML attribute with the same name, essentially. Now you get to decide what it's named when you build your own templates. So in this case, we called it image file. And you can see that the path here is stored in the XML right here. And then this, of course, gets pulled into the Flash player at the time that the learner's asking for it to show that image. So when the learner opens this page, then this Flash movie here says, all right, we need to get an image. And the code in the Flash movie says, we need an image, and we need to look in the XML file for an attribute called image file. And so the code says, all right, look there, and oh, it looks in the page tag, and ta-da, here it is, image file. It says this is the path. Then the code in this template says, go take that path and load it into whatever object that's in that Flash movie. So does that make sense? Any questions about that? If you do, just raise your hand there. Okay, looks like you're both on board there. If you do ever have any questions, just raise your hand or put it in the question area. Okay, John, looks like you have a question, so I'll just read that. John's saying the ActionScript interacts with the XML file to find what it needs to populate the Flash movie. That's right. So another way to put it is this. Let me pull up this sample movie, the same one we're looking at here, in ProForm. I'll expand this out to make it a little bigger. So if we look at this page, well, let me jump back to the PowerPoint. There's one other thing that I want to point out. This is terminology that we use. We call this an input form, okay, on this side, and then we call this an output template. So we're really inputting, meaning we're getting input from the course developer, and outputting mean we're outputting it to the learner. So if we go back to ProForm, here we have the input form, and if we look on the Advanced tab, there's what's called the content file, and this is the Flash movie that's the output template. Okay, so the output template has to be able to read in, using ActionScript, read in that XML. So if we look at the preview of this sample, we go to that page. There are two main Flash movies that we need to be concerned with when we're talking about building templates. There's what's called the player.fla. In fact, let me pull that up to show you the source file to this. So it'll take me just a second here. Okay, well, I don't have the source files showing here yet, but we do have the Flash movies themselves, the SWF files. So when we're looking at the main player, right, the overall interface, that's what this player.fla is. And if you wanted to create your own custom player, meaning the look and feel, which again we're not going over today, but this is what you would customize for the most part. There are other pieces as well, like the glossary and so on. But when we're talking about templates, we're really talking about what gets loaded in this area, because the main player movie is persistent. You know, if I navigate from page to page, this part of it doesn't change. It's just there the whole time, and it loads and unloads other Flash movies into this area. And these Flash movies can either be just flat Flash movies like this one that was built in Swish that just has an animation, or they can be XML-driven objects or templates that, like this one, that goes out and looks for the text, the image, and the audio to play. So that ActionScript is going to go out and look in the XML file, and the ActionScript also tells Flash what to do with the content it finds in the XML file. So let me know if you have other questions about that. All right. So what we're going to focus on mostly today is not the player, but rather just how do you build the output template and the input form, right? So you really have to have both pieces to be able to create a template. You've got to have this input form that lets people write the XML without having to know XML. You could get away with not having it and just manually type in all the XML yourself, but you know, why do that when it's easy to build a template, a form, an input form. So you've got to have the two pieces. You've got to build the input form and the output template. And this input form is going to write out to the XML, and the nice thing about that is there's no programming required to make it do that. But the output template does require some programming because it's going to be based on whatever you want it to do. So you're going to have to say in your template here, go out to the XML file, get whatever content's there, and do whatever you want to do with it. Okay. So we're going to focus on building these two pieces, and we're going to do it kind of simplistically today so that you understand the concept with a simple example, and then I'll show you some more complex examples just to kind of point you in the right direction. One of the best ways to learn how to do this and how it works is to explore the existing templates. Now the other thing I should mention is all of the ActionScript related to the output template is ActionScript 2. We are working on an ActionScript 3 version of ProForm, or course styles that will work with ProForm, but that's not out yet. So everything in ProForm right now is ActionScript 2, as is Unison. And in case you're not aware, ActionScript 2 and 3 are quite different. So if you're learning ActionScript, if you're going to stick with the current version of ProForm for a while, learning ActionScript 2 is fine. But you may also want to start learning ActionScript 3 if you want to take advantage of the same concepts in some of the newer versions of ProForm that will be coming out probably next year sometime. Okay, so what we're going to do now is stop the PowerPoint and actually go into some of the file structure to show you where things are. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy in the source files. So the place you copy in source files into a project is in the Edit Project tab right here in ProForm. So I'm going to click Copy Source Files and click OK. And if we actually open up the directory here, we should see it populating with some source files. Unless it doesn't for some reason, which let's just take a look here. I just installed Windows 7 over the weekend, so maybe it's something related to that. Let's try that again. I've never had that have a problem, so we'll see what happens here. It looked awfully fast for some reason. Let's see. Okay, well, we may have to do this just a little bit different way. Let's try something else here. Let's do a save to a new location. Okay, interesting. The files look like they were there. They copied over anyway, which is good, so we'll just use this example. So you can see the Flash source files copied in here. This really makes me curious, though. Just indulge me for a second while I see if those files were there and just weren't showing up in maybe it's because it was the program files directory that it had trouble. I don't know. Let's see, because the samples normally aren't in there like that. Oops, it's program data. Huh. Interesting. I don't know why they didn't show up in this directory, but they copied over fine, so that'll work to the other directory. So let's just take a look at some of the file structure to understand where everything is at. So again, the overall player is this player.fla, and we're not going to do much with that. What we want to look at are two things. Remember the input form and the output template. Well, the input form is not stored in your project. It's part of ProForm. It's not part of your project. So the only thing we can find in the project itself is the output template. And what I recommend when creating a customization, an extension like this with the output template, is that you start with a project, copy in all the source files, and work with it in that project until you get it where you want it, and then you can distribute it or put it in your installation directory. You don't really want to put it in your installation directory until you're ready for prime time, and there's a lot of testing that you have to do just to make sure that you built it correctly. So I always build things when I'm working with them in a project rather than in the installation directory as far as the output template goes. But this is where you're going to find the output templates. In the project, you go to Swifts and then go to Template Swifts, and these folders right here are the different Flash movies associated with the different templates. So if you were going to create a new one, then you would probably create a new folder in here and put it in there. But if we were to look at the output template for the text, image, and audio, right, here it is. And I'm just going to open that up in Flash. So this is the output template. And we'll come back to that. Get my trial popping up here because I haven't activated since I installed Windows 7. But I love Windows 7, by the way. So this is the output template. Now let's open up the input form. Now this is stored in a different directory. This is going to be stored in the installation directory for ProForm. You're going to find that in Program Files, Rapid Intake, ProForm, and then you're going to look in the Templates folder. Now, we really should have called this the Forms folder. but when we first built this, for whatever reason, we called it Templates, and it's not a good name for this folder. Now, only the advanced developers really pay attention to this folder, but most people, when they think templates, think, oh, the course interface or even the output template. But this is where you're going to find the forms. Okay, so you're going to go into Nodes and then Page. So all the forms in ProForm are actually Flash movies built with special components that we built specifically for ProForm. So if we go look at the text, image, and audio template, and we open that up in Flash, you can see that this is the exact form that we have here in ProForm, right? So we got a little bit different background because the background just goes through it, shows through the back of the form. But you can see that the layout is exactly the same. We have a basic and we have an advanced tab. If we look in the Flash movie here, you can see we have the basic and the advanced tab. Tab content is stored on different frames, so every frame in the form is considered a different tab, and then you use this tab component to make it go back and forth between the two. But the main thing I want to point out here is just that the forms that you see in ProForm are all built the same way that I'm going to show you how to build your own forms. So if you ever want to change how some of the existing forms work or some of the existing templates, you can do that in the same way that you would build one from scratch. In fact, I usually recommend that people don't start from scratch, but rather start with an existing template. So, any questions up to this point? Okay. So, just to reiterate, one of the main benefits of building these kinds of reusable page templates is rapid development, consistency, and fewer errors all around a customized approach to how you want rapid development to be. So we have, of course, many templates that come with ProForm, learning games, branching scenario simulations, but everybody in every organization has a different approach to how they want to build content. And what this allows you to do is build very customized content very quickly through the form-based approach. As an example, one of our customers, a large accounting firm on the East Coast, they had about 200 courses that they needed to build, and they spent a couple of months building a library of reusable interactions. They wanted to make these courses but not make them just page turners. So they wanted them to be interactive, but they did not want to spend all the time normally required to build interactions, and so for every course. So what they did is they bought ProForm. They spent the time building a custom library of reusable interactions, tested them all, and then they built over 200 courses in 4 months and deployed them, okay, A to Z. And these courses are very interactive and very engaging, high-quality content, and they did this by building these templates up front. And so it's a little bit of an investment to build the template, but once you're done, you can really build great interactive content very quickly. And of course, that's what our tools are based on, is the ability to do that. But what you're learning how to do here today is do that with your own concepts about what you want. So you could build a new learning game or a certain kind of simulation or whatever it is that you want to templatize and make form-driven in Flash, and then you can distribute that to other ProForm or Unison users that might be on your team. So it can turn out to be a very big benefit. The other advantage is once you've tested a template, it's very consistent and usually error-free or close to error-free. The same company that I was just mentioning, after they did 200 courses, they averaged the number of quality assurance bugs they had per course. And he said there were less than 5 per course, meaning just things that didn't work. Okay, that's not counting content review, like, oh, this content is not correct, you have the wrong image here or something. But the actual functionality of the course working, when they went through QA testing, they had less than 5 problems per course. And that's amazing if you think building 200 courses in 4 months you'd think would be very error prone. But because they spent the time to put the templates together up front and test them, then it was just a matter of consistency. Now, they didn't do all their content in templates. They had some content that was built as one-off Flash movies and things like that, but the majority of their content was used, defined in the scope of the template library that they built. So just want to sort of emphasize the value you can get from learning some of these features in our tools. So let's explore this template to give you an idea of how it works, and then we're going to actually build one that is simpler, but we'll use the same concepts. So let's just start with something simple like the page title. So again, we're looking at the input form here, and remember that the input form needs to output to the XML. So how do we get this form to write the XML out to the right place with the right attribute name and so on? Well, this is one of the nice benefits of Rapid Intake tools. We make that part of it very easy for you. You don't have to do any programming. What you're going to find is when you create templates, or you're going to use a library of components that we built specifically for this purpose that write out automatically the XML. So here we have a title field, and this is an instance of what's called the single-line text input Swift. Again, this is one of our components that we built specifically for this purpose, and it comes with the Professional Edition. So these are all listed over here. If we look at that same component over here on the right-hand side, you can see that here. Now, the magic sauce actually comes in setting the parameters. So if we open up the parameter panel, I guess I can't expand that. If we open up the parameter panel, you can see that there are lots of different options down here. And this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of how the component writes out the XML. So we have the title, which is the label, the word title in this case, and this is just the label on the form. Okay, so this doesn't affect the XML at all. It's just to help the course developer know what this field is for. Then we have the template type, and you're almost always going to use page template because that's what it's designed for. And that's what we're learning today. The tab index allows you to define what order pressing tab goes through the form. So if we go and look at ProForm, we stick our cursor in the first field, and hit tab, it goes and tabs through all of the objects one by one. Well, the way that it knows how to do that is by the tab order in the parameters. And so we're giving it a 0 because that's basically the first number. And that is the first number, not basically the first number. I guess unless you count negative numbers. Anyway, so 0 just means this is going to start there. And then if we were to look at other components, you'd see that they have different numbers here. We're also going to choose what kind of node it is. Now, node refers to the XML. Okay, let's take a look at the XML. Oops. So if we open up the XML, for this sample, when it says node, a node is really any tag that looks like HTML, any tag in the XML. And so what we're referring to when we say in the component active node, it means the page node. Okay, so this is the page node it's referring to, and that's because it knows that because ProForm, the action script in ProForm keeps track of what's called the current page. So when the learner clicks next and they go to that page, it knows that this is the node that we're looking at. Okay, it ignores all of the others at that moment. They're still there in the XML, but the one that the learner wants is this one. And so it basically goes to this point and is ready to do something. Now, what we're saying by saying active node here is we want to write out something to the page node in the sco.xml file. Okay? And you don't have to actually do anything. It's usually set to that by default. Now you can build sub nodes, or what we call child nodes. And so you can see these are examples of child nodes or descendant paths, right? Because they're under the page tag. So this is the active or current node. These are the descendant or child nodes. Okay, so then the other thing we're going to do, we're going to skip this descendant path because we're on the active node for the title. And we're going to choose what type of XML object or element we are building or going to write to. In this case, we're going to write an attribute called title. And this is really the key. These three things. What node? The active node. What are we writing? We're writing an attribute, and we're going to give it an actual name of title. So if we go look at the XML, and we go search for the title field. Okay, here we are down here at the end. Okay, so the only reason that this word title shows up in this file or in this node is because this form says write out an attribute in that node called title and take whatever's in here and make it the value. So in runtime, meaning in ProForm itself, right, we put in, the course developer puts that in. When they hit save to save this out, then it knows how to do that. Again, you don't have to know any ActionScript to be able to do that. That's kind of the magic sauce here, is to be able to just drag and drop these objects on here, tell it what you want, and it automatically does it for you. Okay, any questions at this point? Okay, so again, that's essentially how the input form works. You use an object from over here, a component, put it on the stage, and you tell it what you want it to do down here in the parameters. Okay, no programming required. And then once you have published this page, remember that we put them out here in, or we found this one in this directory, right, in the program files directory where we installed ProForm. Once you save this in this page directory and you publish it and then restart ProForm, that form will automatically show up in ProForm. Okay, and I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. So let's look at some other examples. The media path. Okay, we have a label, and the tab index is 4, right? Because there's 1, 2, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 objects up to this point. And it's another attribute with media path. Now, there's another difference in this one. There's some options in some of these different components that are specific to the component. In this case, it's a browse button, right? Notice if we look at the properties, this is called a file input SWF component. And if we look at that over here, you see it has the little browse button there to go browse on your desktop. So if we put this on there, we need to define what are they browsing for. They're going to browse for a file or a folder. Well, most of the time it's going to be a file because it's some kind of media or text object or something you want to include in this page. But you could include a folder. Let's say that you were building a page that randomly picked some images from that folder, from a folder, and displayed them along with some other data or something. Well, to get all of those images, one of the ways that you could do that, one of the ways that you could make that happen is the course developer would need to say where the folder is. Or you could just program it, hard code it. But if you wanted the course developer to be able to browse for a folder that has images, then you would use a component like this to set a folder rather than a file. In this case, we're looking for specific audio files, MP3, so we also get to create a filter so that when the user browses for that, they're only going to see the type of file that will actually work with this template. If I didn't have this filter here, then they could browse for a PowerPoint template or something, and they might think that it's going to work, but it's not going to work. So it's important to, if you're browsing for files, to filter down just what works for them. So that's more of a usability issue than a technical issue, but it helps the learner know, or the course developer know, what to browse for. And this is related to that. So let's just look at ProForm, see how that works. So if I click Browse, you can see it shows the word MP3, and it will only show me MP3 files, which I don't have any right here. Let's see if we go into Media. Here's one, right? Okay. So even though there might be more files in there that are MP3 files, it's not going to show me those. I'm sorry, MP3 that are not MP3 files, if there are more files in there. So going back to Flash, this is the actual filter, and then this is what shows down beneath. It's just a description of that filter. Okay, any questions? Let's see, I've got a question here from Chris. What would the info source be besides an attribute? So the thing that's most common is a text node, okay? And I'll talk about that a little bit more. Well, now's a good time, actually. Let's look at the page text, okay? So you can see the difference with the page text is that we have the label, we have same kind of things, template type, tab index, but instead of node being active node, we chose descendant. Okay? And then we give it a descendant path, and then we define what that descendant is, and that is a text node. And if we look at the XML, did I close that XML? I must have closed that XML page. Oops. Oh, there it is. So if we look at at this particular, what it writes out here, because I said it's a text node and it's a descendant path, it's actually going to write this out in this area here. So this node array is really something designed not for users such as yourselves. And I'm not real familiar with what that is myself, but that's something that's just in there for our programmers to use in certain situations. But the most common things you're going to use are attributes and text nodes, and that should keep you or give you all the things that you need to build even very complex kinds of content structures. So you could actually build a whole structure of data within one page node, right? You could have attributes, and then within that you could have child nodes, and within those you could even have other child nodes. Okay. So again, looking at the page text, call it ptext. It's a text node. We skip the attribute name because it's not an attribute this time. And so it writes out, the result of this is that it writes out the content for the text field. So that's what you're usually going to want to use for text fields. And notice this is what's called a HTML input shell. And we have a smaller version of it called the mini shell. Both of those are, write out the kind of content you're going to see here, the C data tags. This allows for HTML formatting to be applied to that, as well as style sheet formatting and things like that. So that automatically gets written out once they start putting in their data, and it writes all that out. You don't have to worry about that part, but that's what that information is there. Okay, here's another type. This is a drop-down list, or combo box. And if we look at the parameters, you see it's very similar. Set it up as an attribute in the current node. But then what's different is we need to add the different values, or the labels and the values. So one thing you can do here is you can put in the values right in the drop-down list and then leave this blank for the data, and it just uses the labels as the data. So if we were to look at the note type, see if we had a note on this page. No, there's no note on this page, so let's just go add one. I don't know if this is true, but we'll just put it for the heck of it. And click Save Project. Reopen this file here. And if we go look at the same page, oops, then we should see a note type is note right here. Okay, so you can see that it actually took the value of the drop-down list and put it in the attribute. So if we go back and look at the object, this put this value note right in that attribute, because we didn't have anything in this menu data field. Okay. So that's kind of an overview of how some of the different components work. Also want to tell you about two components you may want to use in almost every page that you build. One is the tab component. Again, this allows you to just create multi-tabbed forms. If we go back and look at ProForm and see, we click back and forth between these tabs, and this component essentially makes the Flash movie move back and forth between these two frames, or however many frames you have. So you drag and drop that on and simply put in the names of the tabs, and once you publish it, those tab values will show up at the top. Now, one of the things you'll notice when you're working with these components is they don't automatically show up. In fact, let's add something here and see if it shows up here. First tab. Right, so I clicked first. I added another tab, but it doesn't show up here. That's because there's nothing to tell Flash to refresh this like it does in runtime. But if you were to publish this and then reopen this source file, you would see your changes there. But rest assured, they'll show up in the runtime. But don't be alarmed if when you set a label or something, the label doesn't show up correctly as you're building your form the first time. Once you reopen it, they should show up. Okay, so the tab is great because you can have up to 5 different tabs. That means you can create some very extensive forms for complex output templates that you might have. I'll show you one that has a lot of forms here in a minute. A lot of tabs. Now, speaking of the Advanced tab, I want to give you a sort of a best practice tip. And that is that if I was going to start a new template, I would start with an existing template that had some of the same things that I wanted in it. So if I wanted something that had 3 images and 3 text objects that was interactive or something, I'd probably just start with the text and image, because it already basically has the content set up for text and image, and I would tweak it and maybe just add different tabs, say image 1, image 2, image 3. Now, one of the main reasons for that is because every template has the Advanced tab, and the Advanced tab has some stuff on it that needs to be there no matter what template you build. So if you're not sure which template to start with, I would start with the default template. The default template has basic Flash content settings on it, and you can change those or remove some of them, but the things that you need are well, again, it just depends. Maybe default's not the best one. It's one I like to start with, but in some situations it may make more sense to start with something else like a text and image. What you need is this content file field, because this field is what tells the Flash player where your output template is. Okay, so just going back to this image, what's happening is the player movie, the outer shell here, when the learner clicks on the most famous piece, the player movie says, I need to now load something over here. I need to load a Flash movie in. And it doesn't know whether it's a flat Flash movie or an XML Flash movie or anything like that. It just knows it needs to load a Flash movie into this area. It's an empty movie clip in Flash, and it loads it in there. So how does it know what Flash movie to load? Well, it knows because we're looking at, it knows to look for the content file path and Flash movie. So this is where you're referencing what Flash movie you want to load. Now in a regular page template where we're just loading in an external Flash movie, the content movie is the Flash movie, is the template essentially, because there's no XML driven content in this case. It's just an external Flash movie. But in a template, what we're loading in is the output template that doesn't really have any content in it. It's just a placeholder. So you need to have this as one of your items. You also need the load percentage, frames per second, and the link ID. These are all things that need to be there. So I always start with an existing template and just leave the advanced tab unless I know that I want to take it off, take objects off of it. Now, we've talked about the page form itself. Let's talk about the input form. Let's talk about the output template. So when this page, I'm sorry, when the player loads the wrong spot, when the player loads this page, it's going to go out and look for whatever is in the content file attribute and load in that Flash movie. And if we look at Flash, this Flash movie, it really doesn't have anything in it. You can see it's just got a bunch of empty placeholders, and that's exactly what you're going to build for your content output templates, because the XML or the ActionScript is going to go check the XML and populate whatever objects you have here from the XML. Does that make sense? Just want to make sure if you have any questions about that. It's important to understand the concepts before we go through actually building one. So we've looked at the input template, input form and the output template. Got to keep those straight. And so the input form doesn't require any programming. You drag the components on, set the parameters, publish it, restart ProForm, and it shows up. The output template does require programming, because this is something you have to design from scratch, or you can use one of the existing ones that we have and modify it. But you have to decide what you want it to do. In this case, we're loading text, page text. Okay, we're loading caption beneath the image. We're loading the image into a movie clip, and so on. Now, how does it all get positioned, right? So if I'm not positioning these things manually here, how does it position? You can position things manually, but if you want to give the course developer some options, you can do that as well. So notice on this template, we have the option of positioning the image on the left, right, center, whatever. And the ActionScript is then going to say, okay, based on this information here, and we're going to position things on the left or right, and so on. So in this case, we have the image on the right. Well, it said it's on the left, but here, let's save that. Oops. I just changed the screen type, which I just go back to text, image, audio. Let me reopen this. It's not, because I changed the page type. There we go. It lost some of the stuff that didn't pertain to that new page type. So you can see this is on the right-hand side. If I change it to the left, hit save, and reopen the preview or refresh it. Oops. Let's make sure we've got the right thing open. Okay, there we go. So now you can see I have my note down here as well. So hopefully now you understand how this content gets into this page output, and then as far as positioning goes, you don't have to position anything with your code, but whenever you see anything positioned in our templates where you have positioning options, then it's based on the code. And I'll show you a little bit about how that works in the sample that we're going to build. Okay, so we're going to build a sample here. Before we do that, we're going to take a break because we've been going for about an hour now. And so we'll take a break, right now I have 11:05 Mountain Time, so 5 after the hour. So let's take a break until about a quarter after. So just shy of 10 minutes, and we'll be right back. Oh, Chris, sounds like you have a question. Okay, you say, how do you add a tab again? I'm just going to unmute you since you have the option there.
Yeah, I didn't see that when you added that. You showed how to add a tab.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
I missed that somehow.
Sure, no problem.
We can do it after the break if you want, Garen. That's all right.
Oh, that's okay. I'll just do it right now real quick.
Okay, great.
So right here, you're just going to choose the tab component. If it's not already on the form that you're using, drag it in. And then in the parameters, you're going to just double-click this tab labels field, and then you just add your tabs here.
Okay.
So we'll say basic, let's say image info number 1 or something. Right. Now when I click OK, it doesn't show that right here, and that's what I was saying earlier. Is when you're building the input form, you have to rely on what's in the parameter information down here, because it doesn't refresh up here in the Flash authoring environment until you publish it and then reopen it. But that's how you would add it. Now, if I were to, in fact, I think it will actually show us if we just save this. I want this to be Flash 8. Well, I don't know what, I guess I have to save it as a new name. But anyway, the point is that once you reopen the source environment, then they should show up again. But that's how you add the tab.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for the break, Chris or John? Okay. We'll take a break again till about a quarter after, and then we'll regroup in just a minute. We'll just stay on the line. I'll just put myself on mute and so on, and then we'll regroup here in a second. Okay guys, I am back. Sorry that took so long. I actually need a couple more minutes. I'm having a permissions problem with Windows 7 right now, trying to say, just setting up for the next exercise I was going to show you. So give me just a couple minutes, I'll try to get that worked out and I'll be right back. Okay, Chris and John, thanks for waiting there. Um, Unfortunately, I cannot figure out what the permissions problem is on here, but that shouldn't hinder us too much. It's just I won't be able to show one final thing, which we've already talked about. I just wanted to go through the whole process from start to finish. We'll just have to use a finished example at the end there to show how that works. But what we're going to do is ProForm has a jigsaw puzzle template. It lets you build a jigsaw puzzle easily by pulling in an image and so on. So we're actually going to build this one from scratch. I'm going to show you how this template works first. So I'm going to add a new jigsaw puzzle template. And so we're just going to add one first. So you can see we choose the jigsaw puzzle template type. We then have these options. And I like to use this as an example to teach how to build custom page templates because it just has a few options to set. I'll explain why in a minute. But allow rotation, the picture. So let's go look for a picture. Oops. Number of pieces, so we'll split it into 2 pieces each direction. Classic. Hit save. Do a preview. And now if we go down to jigsaw, you can see we have a jigsaw puzzle here. And we can rotate the pieces around. I don't know if you were familiar with this particular template, but that's what this one does. And so you can see again, it shows the benefit of creating custom page templates because to build a jigsaw puzzle in Flash for every time you wanted one would be a little bit of a pain, but because we built a page template, all the course developer has to do is browse for the picture, tell it how many to slice it into, and you're done. So rapid development with a specific purpose in mind. Incidentally, I used this page template a couple of Christmases ago to build interactive jigsaw photo album for my children as a Christmas gift. I took all of my favorite photos of them throughout the year and made a ProForm course where each page was a picture of them in a jigsaw puzzle, and they had to do it, and it was great. It was I mean, it's not an e-learning course per se, but it was a quick way to build something interactive. I was surprised. I built 3 different CDs in an hour and a half and had them all burned and published and everything with all their pictures. And I just bring that up because it shows, again, the rapid development of something very interactive once you make it into a template. So how does this template work? So what we need to do first is we need to understand how the jigsaw puzzle works. So let's look at that first. Now the jigsaw puzzle is actually based on a Flash component provided from a company called somefrogs.com. They build Flash components and they freely distribute this one. They gave us permission to distribute it as part of our product, and so it makes the process a lot easier. If you had to program everything to make a jigsaw puzzle, that would be a nightmare. But it's already programmed and it's just a component. So the way that this component works by Some Frogs is you go into Flash and you put your component on here. Oops. And then you need to look for the component inspector. And you can see that the component has its own attribute or its own parameters. So whether it starts automatically, whether there's rotation, what the borders of the images are, what the actual image is, how many pieces to split it into, right? So we could build a jigsaw puzzle with this component in Flash pretty easily. Just drag it in, fill this out, publish it to Flash, and that works. And that's cool. But again, the advantage of templatizing it is from here on out in ProForm, anybody can build it just by filling out the form associated with it. And that's even faster and doesn't take Flash to do. So, so how do we take something like this and turn it into a template? I use this example also because you can use other components. If we look at the components window, right, other components that come with Flash, such as the media display component, such as things like the loader to load images, window, basically pop-up, kind of like pop-up windows, things like that. You can populate content using XML in a similar way that we're going to do that here. And we use a lot of components in our own templates that just come with Flash. So it's just a quick way to be able to work with things. Just as an example, let's just say we had a text area we wanted to put on here, and we looked at the component inspector, right? The main thing that we would need to populate is the text itself. And so we're going to have our code say, go get the XML and put it into this component with the text, right? So whenever you use components in Flash, you're going to want to find out what are the properties or parameters of that component so that you can set those in your ActionScript. Now, you don't have to use components. You could just build text objects. You could build dynamic text, give it a variable name, and then in the ActionScript populate that with the XML content, things like that. So I'm not going to go into all the different things you can do. You can explore some of the existing templates to really get an idea of how the different things you can do. But basically anything that you can populate with ActionScript, you can populate with ProForm because you can grab the ActionScript or the content from the XML. I'll just do one other example before we just focus on the jigsaw puzzle here. Here's a loader, and a loader takes basically displays an image in this component, and it can scale the content, scale the image to the size of the loader. And so what would we set with XML and ActionScript? We'd set the content path. We could also, if we set the form to let them choose whether they wanted to scale or keep the original image size, we could read the XML and set the scale content property and so on. Okay, so again, there are lots of different things you can do with Flash, and there are lots of other components you can get on the internet and in the Exchange from Adobe that could also be driven with XML and ProForm. So the sky's the limit really in terms of what you can do with it. It's very flexible in that way. So let's just focus on how to do this one example here. So we have some documentation from some frogs we got off their website that basically says this is how you set the parameters with ActionScript, right? Remember, we have these parameters we need to set, such as what the pick linkage property. We need to set the puzzle res height or horizontal and vertical values. We need to set the type of image, and we want to do all this through ActionScript. So what we would do is we drag this component onto the screen, and then we need to add ActionScript. So we're going to open up the ActionScript editor, and I have the ActionScript here, so you don't have to sit and try to type the whole thing in, but I just want to walk through what we would do. Okay, so we would have to create this ActionScript, but we'll just walk through what it all means. And this one's pretty simple, right? Because we just have a few parameters that we need to set, and it will work. Other page templates are usually going to be more complex than this, but this helps us really see clearly how it all fits together. First of all, I want to talk about this right here. Remember that what we are building is the page output template, and it resides inside of the course interface or the player, right? Remember, we're building this template, and we have this player area out here, and what we're focusing is on this. Now, one of the things that we often want to know when we're building a template is how big is the area here that we have to work with, right? Because it could be varying sizes. In ProForm, you can choose lots of different sizes, such as 1024 by 768 or 800 by 600, right? Or you could even have custom sizes when you build your own custom interfaces. So when you build a template, you want to know, what is this area size? Well, one of the things that you need to do when you build a custom interface is in the custom interface we store two we store two variables, present size height and present size width. So what we're saying in this action script right here is we're going to create two variables, and we're going to go get the height and the width of the parent movie, which is the player. Get the height and the width values of those variables and put them into player H and player W. Okay, so it's not really the size. Those values don't mean the size of the whole player. They refer to just the presentation area, and they're there specifically for that purpose, so that we can read them as a template and position things and size things dynamically. So that means that this template, what we're trying to do is make it so that this jigsaw template will work with whatever player style is used, no matter how big or small this area is here. Okay, so does that make sense? Okay, John, you have a question? Let's see, the content path would be an XML attribute. Sorry, this is probably from back a little bit, but yes, the content path, basically if we go back to Flash here, and we look at the component inspector, it's looking for pick linkage in this case, or like for the loader, could be what you're talking about. But we're gonna set the value of this from ProForm by making a form that writes that out, and we're going to read that in using ActionScript and from the XML. And it looks like Lynn Jane, you just joined us, so want to welcome you. We're actually a hour and a half or so into this training session, and this is an advanced session on creating reusable page templates, and I am recording it, so I will post the recording probably later this week, so you can see the whole thing if you need to reference it. Okay, so what we're talking about right now is we're just building a sample jigsaw puzzle template, and so what we're starting with is just understanding what needs to be in the XML. So what needs to be in the XML are those things that we need to set here, right? The pick linkage, the width, the height, and so on. So we can start in either location. We could either build the form first, or we could write the code to read the XML. It doesn't really matter. What I like to do generally is I like to build the form first, because that helps me keep track of, okay, here are all of the objects that I need, and these are the attribute names I'm giving them. And then once that's writing out to the XML, I can go in and read them. In fact, let's do it that way. That'll be probably a little bit more clear to explain it that way. So what I've done is I've started with a template that already has the Advanced tab, for example, which I talked about earlier. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say I'm starting with a template. Oh, what's going on here? Some new feature in Flash I don't know about. Okay. Let me save this and reopen it, because I'm just seeing outlines. I'm just going to save this on my desktop. Okay, what did I hit here? Ah, I hit the outline button. Okay, not a feature I use very often. Okay, I guess hitting that button there just turns everything into outlines, for whatever that's worth. Okay, so what we're doing here is I started with a different page input form, and then I deleted everything that I didn't need. I know I need a title, because even though my jigsaw puzzle doesn't have a title in it, I need it over there for the table of contents. And so then what are the other kinds of things that we need? Well, let's go back. Maybe the first thing should be a way to browse for the image, because that's what we're focusing on. We want a jigsaw puzzle that has an image. So again, to do that, we're going to go over here to the library, and we're going to choose the file input object. Just position it wherever we want. And then we need to pull up the parameters tab here. And we could also look at the component inspector, would show it to us there as well. In fact, let's just do that. It's a little easier to share the screen that way. So in the component inspector, we're going to give it a label. So we'll say image. And then we'll give it a tab index of 1, because this was 0 up here. The node is an active node. It's an attribute. We want to give it an attribute name. And I already chose the names because I already have the XML or the ActionScript written. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this puzzle pick right here. So for puzzle picture. Okay, so we want it to write out an attribute called puzzle pick. And what are they going to be browsing for when they click this browse button, a file or a folder? They're going to be browsing for a file. Okay, so we'll leave that. What do we want them to browse for? Well, in this case, it needs to be a JPEG, or it could be a Flash movie. This actually works with a Flash movie as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and go, okay, it has to either be a file name that starts with whatever and ends in JPG, or it ends in .swf. Okay, then we're going to give some labels to these, so JPEG and Flash SWF. And then we want to know, we're going to have it be a relative path or an absolute path. In this case, we want a relative path because the file needs to be in the project directory. So that's the default. We'll leave that. That's all that we really need to do on that one. Okay, so what's something else that we want to do? We want to be able to have the course developers say, oh, I want to split it into so many pieces. So if we look back at the component inspector for this object, notice it's puzzle res H and puzzle res V that lets you split it into sizes. So what I'm going to do is we're going to use the number input box, which is just a little field here, and just position that where we want it on the form. Oops, so used to doing it down there. Then we're going to come here and we'll give it a label, say puzzle width, and we'll give it a tab value of 2. And again, it's going to be an attribute. And let's just look in. And again, you can choose the attribute name. When you haven't written the action script yet, you can choose the attribute name. In this case, I've already written the action script, so I call it puzzle W. That's what I called it. So we're going to tell it, write out an attribute called puzzle W for puzzle width. Default value, we could put in a default value if you want. Maybe every puzzle should be split into 2 by default, wide and 2 high. And that's all we need for that one. Okay, the next thing, we're going to do the same thing with the next one. This will be the puzzle height. So we'll look at the component inspector, give it a label, puzzle height, give it a value of the tab index of 3, an attribute name of puzzle H, for puzzle height, give it a default value of 2. And I think that's all we're going to, well, we're going to do the one other thing. There's 2 other things. There's the ability to set the shape. right? So the way this works here is if I change this to triangles and hit preview, you can see that the way that their component works is, we've got triangled edges basically. So we get to choose what type of shape we want. So we want the course developer to be able to choose that. Now, we don't have to do that. We could just say, just always leave it in classic. We wouldn't have to put any code because it's already set to classic on the component right here. But if we want the course developer to be able to set that, then we have to be able to track that in the XML. So this gives us a good opportunity to look at a couple of different types of components here as well. So this one is the combo box component. So it's a drop-down box. So again, we'll pull up the component inspector, put in the label, puzzle shape, give it a value, tab value, and we'll store all this in the attribute as well. So let's see what I called this in the XML. I just called it puzzle type. Okay. Oh. What am I doing here? Some keystroke. Okay, puzzle type. And then the only other thing we were going to add was before we finish this, we have to add the actual values. And so we can see the values over in Flash. Oops. In the component itself are classic, oval, triangle, square, and mixed. So we're just going to come in here and say classic, oval, triangle, square, and mixed. Okay, we'll just leave the data blank because we'll just use these labels as the values themselves because that matches what they had over in the component itself. Now we need to add one last thing, which is a checkbox, and this is, do we allow them to rotate the images with their spacebar, which is one of the features of that component. So we're going to again pull up the component inspector and maybe say allow rotate as the label. Give it a tab index and the attribute name again. I'll look here for that. We call it allow rotate. Okay. Whoop. And by default we'll leave it checked, which basically means it's true or untrue. Okay, so we'll leave it checked. So there's our form. Now I'm going to save that. I don't know if it's going to give me permissions to actually put this where I need to put it. Like I said, I was struggling with some Windows permissions, which I wasn't able to resolve, but we'll try just because I want you to see the form in action. Let's see, I put this on the desktop. Here we go. So here's the FLA, right? Now, the FLA is not going to help with anything really other than editing the form. What we need is the published form. So we need to come back out to the Flash movie and publish it. And publishing Flash Player 7 or 8 is fine for the forms. I want to make sure it says ActionScript 2. So I'm just going to hit publish. And now we should have the custom jigsaw. And it gives us a couple other files which I could have turned off in the publishing options, but we'll just delete these. What we're really looking for here is this right here, the custom jigsaw. Now I'm going to rename that to be 2, or actually I guess it's custom, so we can leave it. Because what I want to do is I want to move it into I want to move it into the installation directory. So here I'm going to open up program files, go to rapid intake, see if you can remember where we want to put this, right? We're in the installation directory, going to ProForm. Do you know where we're going to put this? Remember, this is the input form. Yeah, it goes in templates, kind of a misnomer on the folder name. We're going to go into nodes, page, because we're editing a page form. Okay, and I'm just going to do a copy, see if it will let me paste it in here or not. Yeah. Okay, and let me do that. Wouldn't let me save it directly from Flash for some reason in here, but I could copy it in. So that's good. All right, so now the key is, what I would do at this point, what we've done so far is create the form. What you're going to need to do is close ProForm and then reopen ProForm. And when you reopen it, ProForm reads all the Flash movies in this directory, and that's where it gets the forms from. And that's what it's doing right here, is preloading these templates or the input forms. And so the more of these that you have, it'll take a little longer to load ProForm because it has to load all of your custom forms as well. So let's go into the same one we're in, and let's just see what happens if we do add a new page. And look, there's custom jigsaw showing up there. It just looks like it's part of the product. Let's say custom jigsaw. So we can, and we click OK, and there's our form, right? So it put the title in the title. It just does that automatically. And now we need to browse for an image. So we'll just come in here and choose the bridge. Notice it picked up our default settings, right? 2 and 2. And then we can choose from one of the shapes. We'll leave it at classic, allow rotate. We hit save. Now, if I preview it, there's one thing I forgot to say in the form. I forgot to point out. And that is on the Advanced tab, right? We need to tell it what the output template is. Now, when you're first creating a form, you may not have even created it yet. In this case, I've already created it. So this form's going to work. It shouldn't really work the first time you do it because you haven't created the output template. In this case, I've already created the output template and I've pointed it to it. But the thing that you need to realize about this one is you need to put in the default value the path. Let me expand this out so we can see the whole path. The path to the output template that you make for it to work. Okay. Now, when you first create it, you may not have that, and that's fine. Because what we're really trying to do when we first create this and run it in ProForm is make sure it's writing out to the XML the way that we expect. So that's what we're going to do is we're going to look at the XML. So let's go to our sample, which is Beethoven sample. I'm going to open up our sco.xml file. Let me close the, well, I guess I can just open it from right here. And if we look at the last page, this is from our new form right here. Okay, it's writing out puzzle pick to the XML. It's writing out a bunch of stuff on the advanced tab that was already there. The things that we added were title, puzzle width, puzzle height with a default value, right? Puts those default values in there. Allow rotate, and the the P type. Sorry, that's not something we added. That's default as well. The other one was the puzzle type. Doesn't seem like it wrote out the puzzle type. Okay. So this is good because this is the kind of thing you need to do when you build your form. Go out, fill out the form, see if it's writing out the XML, If it's not, then we need to go back and look at the form, so let's do that. So this is what we want to, this doesn't seem to be writing out here, so let's look at the component inspector and see if we can figure out what's going on. So we say the active node attribute puzzle type, drop down. It looks good to me. Maybe we should put the values in here. You know what? I'm not going to troubleshoot it right now, just in the interest of time. But this is the process you would go through: is you would fill out the form, create the form, populate it in ProForm, go out and look at the XML, see if it's writing out the different pieces. And once you've got that working, then you're ready to open up and work on the output template. The output template, again, is going to have mostly placeholders for whatever content you want the learner to use or see. And the XML, the ActionScript needs to say what it's going to do with the XML. So what we're doing here is we're getting the size of the height and the width of the player. Then we're going to set that size. We're going to set the size of the component equal to the size of the player presentation area. So again, so that no matter what size we have over here, right, it's going to size it to whatever those variables are in the player. And so it should resize itself based on whatever player is used. Okay, this is where the important part is. I guess it's all important, but just to understand how we pull stuff out of the XML file and do something with it in ActionScript. In this case, we're just pulling out attributes. So it's kind of simple because there are no text nodes or anything like that, but you can explore some of the other samples to see how we work with text nodes. But this is how we do it. We reference the player, okay, that's parent, and then we reference this object, current page underscore XML node. This is already there for you. We don't, in the code, you don't have to say, go out and open up this go.xml file, parse through it, go find the current page. The player already does all of that for you. All you have to do is just do this very same thing, and I usually just copy in another line from another template just so that I get it right. Underscore parent, current page underscore XML node, dot attributes, dot, and then of course you have to read in the exact attribute name that you specified in the form when you created, the form itself. So if we're reading in the title, the attribute is title in lowercase. We can't try to read in from the XML, my title or something like that. It has to be whatever you put in that component. So that's what we're doing here, is we're saying go to the parent movie, get the XML, the part of the XML that contains the current page, look in the attributes and find an attribute called allow rotate and put it into this variable called erot. And we do that for all of the different elements here. And once we have all of those, well, we use a method of, again, this is ActionScript terminology, but we're using a method of the component myjig, and we're passing in these parameters to that method, which sets the value for that component. Now, how do we know to call it myjig? Same thing here, set size. Well, in the player output, the output template, we've named it myjig down here as an instance name. And so you need to remember to do that in ActionScript to be able to reference the objects, the components or movie clips. You have to give them an instance name. Okay, so we're basically just getting the size from the player, setting the size of the component, getting all the elements from the form that are now in the XML file, and then applying those to the component. Okay, I'm going to pause here for questions. See if you have any questions. Okay, so far no more questions. Then what happens is, again, when we fill out the form, that writes out the XML, and then when the learner comes in here, they click on Jigsaw, and the player, this is the order, the sequence basically. The player says, okay, here's Jigsaw, here's the current page. The first thing it does, it looks for the content file value, okay, of the current page node. So let's look at the current page node. We're actually looking at this one here. So we look at the content file value. I'm sorry, just the file value. Okay, so right here. So this is the first thing it does. It says, I need to load, the player says, I need to load a Flash movie into the presentation area at this path. Okay? So for it to work, you've got to have something at this path inside the project folder. So if we go to the project folder, we look at Swifts, template Swifts, rapid intake Jigsaw, there's our Flash movie. Okay, that's the path that we have right down here. Swifts, template Swifts, rapid intake Jigsaw, Jigsaw underscore template Swift. This is one of the most common problems when you're building custom page templates, is not getting this right. So you've got to have this path exactly right in the XML, meaning it's got to be in the form, like I showed you in the form. And then your code, I'm sorry, the player code is going to load that in automatically. So you don't have to code that, but that's the first thing that happens. The next thing that happens is it runs whatever's in this Jigsaw template.swift file. So what's in there? Well, if we look at the code again for that, wrong button. If we look at the code again, the first thing it does is it checks the width and the height of the presentation area, and then it sets the size of the whole component. And so you can see, if we look at the training window, you can see that the component, this particular component actually has a little border on it, and you can see it sizing itself to that area. That's the first thing it does. Then it does whatever other ActionScript is in there. In this case, it loads from the XML a bunch of variables, and then it does everything with it. So, and then of course it's working like it should. So that's a pretty simple example, but I hope it's instructive in showing you how all the pieces fit together. Okay, just again to review in sort of a high-level concept, ProForm writes out the XML, and then Flash loads in that XML, the Flash movie, to display to the learner. And that's what we've done with the jigsaw puzzle example. Okay, so I'm going to close by showing a very complex example, just so you can to open your mind and ideas, or to get your mind open to ideas about what you can do once you've mastered how to do this. So I'm going to open what's called the Soft Skills Branching Scenario Simulation template. It's the most complex template that we have. It doesn't necessarily have the most values, but it's the most complex, and I'm not going to try to explain how it works, but I want you to sort of catch the idea of this. These don't have to be simplistic. A lot of people think, oh, templates, you know, how instructionally effective could templates be because you're constrained by the template. Well, in reality, yes, you are constrained by the template, but you can make a template to accommodate almost any instructional interaction. And so once you've built that reusable set of library items, then you have a very powerful set of tools to use to build very, very engaging and immersive learning experiences. And so we've provided some, but our goal is really to empower our users to build their own and share them and have a community where it can be expanding into a large library of reusable templates made by our users. So anyway, whether you get into that community or not, and you want to build your own, here's an example that has 5 different tabs. So if we start on tab, start on tab 1, you can see we've got a bunch of options there. And tab 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all kind of the same. It's just different choice values. So that's a lot of data, right, to store in one page node. First of all, we've got all this, then we've got all these options for every page. Let me show you what this one does in case you haven't seen it yet. I mean, it's been around for a while, but not everybody knows about it or uses it. I'll just go to a place on our website where we can look at the branching scenario simulation. It talks about what this template does, and this is included in ProForm, Standard Premium and Professional Premium, and in Unison. So, by the way, Lynn, who joined us not too long ago, do you use ProForm or do you use Unison? Oh, okay. Lynn says neither. I guess you're just evaluating this, which is fine. Now just know that this is a very advanced training session, not really a sales demonstration of the features, and it's for Flash developers to take advantage of the ability to build plugins or extensions to the tools. And because the other 2 people in this training session are ProForm users, that's what we're really focusing on today. But these same concepts apply for Unison, so that you can build your own reusable form-driven page templates as well. So this particular template again is available in ProForm and Unison, and what it allows you to do is it allows you to build a simulation that branches. So we actually built this in front of a live audience at a trade show, this particular sample. So we have an image or a video that shows up here. We have a progress meter that shows the progress through the simulation. We have text. We have a bunch of options. We have audio for each option. Right? So there's a lot of content that shows up on every page in the simulation. So you can see that if I click, well, we're posing a problem to the learner basically, and then the learner is going to respond to that problem by clicking one of these options. Okay, so when the learner clicks a choice, right, it branches to someplace in the simulation, and we get some information. And once we get down to an ending point, we get some feedback. Okay, pretty immersive simulation experience, meaning they have multiple outcomes. They can go back and try it again. It has scoring, feedback for the whole simulation. You know, it's pretty complex, but again, it's all form-driven. You don't have to worry about doing the programming. And this is all based on the instructional pattern of branching scenarios. And this is the idea with templates. The template advantage is that you can build instructionally sound content very quickly once the template is built. And again, we have a lot of templates built, but the advantage with the professional edition of ProForm, for example, is you can build your own and extend your own library. So if we look at the form for this particular type of page, let's go down to soft skills simulation. I'm not going to build one or anything, but I just want to show you the form, right? We've got all the different tabs along the top. And this writes out a whole bunch of content. But one of the things that makes this template unique is how the code works together, because this template, in the sample I showed you, we had multiple steps, and each page is a separate step. This template is actually, the code in this template actually keeps track of what happens on other pages. So all the feedback together at the end, for example, is shown by keeping track of what happens on every page. So using the code, you can actually tie multiple templates together into a more, even a longer or more complex learning experience than just one page. You can do a lot on one page, but in this case we're actually doing branching from page to page depending on what the learner's choosing. And what we're doing, just as a tip on how that works, is we are storing the values in the player movie just using code. So every time they go to a page, they choose an option, it has some data, and it dynamically creates a variable that is stored up in the player movie. So we say _parent, and then it stores some value there. And that way, when we get to the end of a scenario and we click Show Feedback, it basically just grabs the values from the stack of data in the player and populates the table here. Okay, so I wanted to show you that example just to help you see, wow, I can do even multi-page kinds of interactions and activities, and just kind of open your mind to, it doesn't have to be just limited to interactions on one page. You can combine them together, use your ActionScript in the templates to keep track of related pages that might be affecting whatever's on that template and so on. So really the sky's the limit in what you can do, and this is one of the things that makes our tools so unique, is that you have the ability to create content very quickly and easily through the form environment, but you have the flexibility of taking advanced skills and leveraging that infrastructure to really create a powerhouse that's designed just for the way that you want to do things. So that concludes the training for today. I hope it was helpful and that you can take this and find some greater efficiencies at your own organization. Again, we simply created, just in summary, we created two things here. We created the input form in Flash, and by completing that input form in Flash correctly, once you open it in ProForm, it automatically starts writing out the XML. Then we also created an output template that reads in the XML and displays or does whatever it's going to do with that content. And so you have to build both things. And then when you're ready to distribute them, let me just go over that briefly. You're ready to distribute them. Of course, the form itself goes in this directory here. Okay, program files, rapid intake, ProForm, installation directory. So once you've built it and you need to distribute it to other ProForm users, you want to go put it in this directory for the form. Now the page output template is a little bit different. You're going to put those in the course files directory in the custom or custom 8 folders. If you've designed one that works just for player 7 or player 8 or higher, if they're different, then you'd put the different ones here. Otherwise, you can put them in, just copy it and put it in both places. This way, you want to just come into this directory, right? You would create your own folder here, put in your custom files, and that way that gets copied into the new projects that you make. Once you're done testing, it gets copied into the new projects from that point on, so that you have that template to be used for any new projects you want to use. So that information is also in the online help files that come with ProForm. So I won't go into a lot of detail there, but that's where you would put those things to share them. So any other questions before I wrap up here? Okay, so John just references the recording, and yes, we are recording it, and so we'll post that online. You can reference it later. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to stay on the line just a little bit. If not, we can wrap up here. Okay, Chris, looks like you have a question, so I'm going to unmute you.
Yeah, thanks, Garen. Great presentation. I noticed the other presentation webinar that's online is only like 45 minutes. It's not complete. Is there a reason for that?
Oh, it only showed 45 minutes of the training?
Yes.
Oh, that would be an error unless the training was only 45 minutes. Did you go through to the end and it seemed like it cut off?
Yes, it seemed like it cut off.
Okay. Well, I'll make a note of that and have somebody look at that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, you bet. So it's been my pleasure to spend some time with you showing you some of these features. Again, if you have any questions as you're trying to do it on your own, you can reference the recording that we have here, that we will have online. And we also have hands-on training if you want to come and do some of these exercises hands-on. If you ever get a chance to come to Utah, our offices are in Provo, Utah. If you ever go to Salt Lake City for some reason, feel free to drop by and say hello to us. If you want the free training, you do need to come at pre-planned, pre-scheduled dates. You can find those on our website. But we're happy to help you through the process. Now, the other thing you should know is we do have a professional services team that can build these for you. They can help troubleshoot. Now, we do charge for that if we're going to troubleshoot your custom programming, but we do have the resources to help you with that as well. If you want to say, I want to build a custom game, I want it to be form-driven, this is what I want, our professional services team can do that for you as well. So you're not alone in the effort to make this happen. I do have to say, though, that when you get into the realm of customization and extending, the normal support is not always going to be able to help you. They'll give you pointers and guidance, but if you want them to actually try to troubleshoot and figure out what's wrong with your code, that's when they're going to want to start charging you for that, because that moves into the realm of custom programming services. So, but we do have those available to support you in that effort. But certainly we're happy to train you and help you understand what you need to be doing in general and point you in the right direction. So please don't hesitate to ask for any guidance on that. So if there are no further questions, then I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. And thanks again for participating, and you guys have a very nice day. Bye-bye.